going on there, YouTube? Look at this mess that I have in front of us right now. If you've been following along, you've seen some sneak peeks on Instagram, and if you've been on the Facebook page, you've seen me and a couple other guys talking about rat rods. And I've always been a big rat rod fan. I've started building a few real ones in real life, and I've just never been able to finish one. And yeah, seen a couple semi-rat rods, some rock crawlers that look like rat rods. So I thought, let's try something a little more traditional. Never really crossed my mind. My Facebook friend Richard, he came across a T-bucket 1/8 scale plastic model, and he wanted to build a rat rod. And at that point I wanted to build a rat rod once I seen his mocked up a little bit and what kind of fits and what doesn't, and I was just pretty enamored with it. So here's what I've got so far. This video is not, we're not building anything in this yet. We're just kind of going over what I'm doing, my plans, and just some ideas and some of the stuff that I plan on using. So this will be part 1 in the build series. Okay, so the body that I chose is a 32 Ford Street Rod Monogram brand model kit. The instructions are copyright 1977. They've made variations of this kit from I don't know when until currently. There's still some available. A new in the box kit, anywhere 120 to 200 depending on how old it is. They're quite collectible. I picked up this one pre-built and kind of partially destroyed. Had some cracks and things here and there. Some of the stuff I wasn't going to use, like the fenders and the suspension and stuff, was all jacked up. But I came with a giant bag of extra parts. I've got other interior pieces, I've got bumpers, I've got fenders, had the hood, all kinds of stuff. And what's cool about these model kits is they were kind of like those 3-in-1s where you could build it bone stock, you could build it mildly custom, or you could take the fenders off and make a cool custom hot rod out of it. And the kit came with all the stuff to do that. So yeah, I ran across this one on eBay. I picked it up. It was about 76, 78 bucks shipped, and had an issue with the shipping. They didn't pay enough shipping, so I had to pay $4 more to pick it up at the post office. But luckily it didn't get sent back, because I've been waiting on it for 2 weeks. It took forever to get here. And yeah, these things are massive, guys. This thing it's way bigger than anything I had imagined. I'll show you some size comparison here. So just kind of a reference, this is a 1.9 RC 4-wheel drive beadlock with the dirt grabber, the standard tire that comes on all the Jalon 2s. And yeah, it body's sitting flat on the table. This one was a little bit more assembled. It had the interior in, the frame was on. I warn you, if you do buy one of these pre-built, they do not come apart easily. All this super glue and model glue that was used to put it together has crystallized over the course of 20-30 years that it's been built and been stored in hot places and discarded and all that. So it is tricky to get apart. I destroyed the plastic frame getting it apart just to get the body on it. This stuff is super brittle, and yeah, the chassis glues to the floor pan, which has the seat and stuff on it, and then they glue the floor pan to the body, and it was a little bit of work getting it apart. I did get one crack in the body. I think it's on the other side, about a 1/4 inch, but it's not bad. It's gonna be a rat rod. It's gonna be banged up and dirty. It's already pretty dirty. I don't have any ideas for paint yet. I kind of like the state of dinginess that it's in. It's very correct. It's a little too shiny for me. So once we get there, I might think about doing a little bit of weathering just to dull it down a little bit, because it's got a good fade to it. A lot of the chrome stuff that is on it is still kind of deteriorating, faded off, looks kind of natural. So I'm gonna roll with that for the body, but we're still a long way from doing any body work, because this is gonna have to have an entire custom chassis built. And I don't know, like some of my stuff, like the windshield post here is broken. I do have partial windshield. I don't know how to attach it or anything yet. It's still going to be a lot of trial and error, missing one door handle. But yeah, this has some interior panels still in it. I don't know if I'm going to use those or not. I don't know if I can get them out. I just did finally get the trunk. It had an entire trunk glued in here. These kits are made where you can cut the doors and the trunk open, so they'll actually work. There's hinges and stuff. Luckily for me, this model has not been cut. It did come with an extra door and I think a trunk lid. So somebody was planning on redoing or had redone it or had another one. So I've got some extra parts, some duplicates and things like that, but luckily the fenders and stuff were already off. They didn't glue very well to that smooth surface. There's still a little bit of glue in there, but I'm going to have to trim all that out anyway. So that's where I'm at with the body. That's, you know, oh, the body does come with a motor. I forgot to tell you about the motor. Now this thing is massive and it's brittle. Every little detail, every little scale thing on here is trying to fall off. Poor thing. My original plan was to put my RC motor inside of this, and you can see I kind of got foiled there. There's not really enough space. The oil pan is in the way, so I'm not sure yet about that, where I'm going to put the motor. Well, I know where I'm going to put the motor. I don't know if I'm going to put the electric motor in that motor, or I'm going to do a closed hood, closed sides, like a Salt Flats racer style with, you know, more aerodynamic, and just not run this motor at all. So I don't know. That's a long time out still. I'm gonna start with some of the RC components. Alright, so what I've got here, I've got the radiator just kind of rubber banded into my frame here. This is an original Tamiya Bruiser frame that I've had for years, and I'd cut it down back before we had a Trailfinder 2 short wheelbase. I'd cut this down to fit a Tamiya Wrangler body. I've attempted sandblasting it. It still got a little paint on it. I don't have quite enough air compressor to do my sandblasting, but I've got some more cross members and stuff for it, but that's all tentative based on how this is going to fit the body. So like I said, this is all steel frame. I was contemplating using this original Tamiya Hilux frame, but I just can't bring myself to hack that up. Those are too rare. And plus, this being steel instead of aluminum, I can braze to it. So any cross members or anything I need to do, I can braze on there. Whereas aluminum, I haven't had much luck. So I'm gonna keep that put up for later, someday maybe. For the rear axle, I've just got an RC 4-wheel drive Yoda 2. I have a spare one. I don't know how. I have a Yoda 1 front and a Yoda 2 rear, so I've just grabbed the Yoda 2 to mount on here. It is a little too narrow. It won't fit, at least with these tires and wheels, it won't fit between the fenders. So I am going to have to look at a way of widening it, and I mean, that can be done with spacers and or flipping the bead locks around, or different bead locks altogether. So I've got a lot of room to play with that. So that's not totally out of the question yet. If you notice though, my chassis is a little short. It needs to be about here. So I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with real hot rods. When they do these 32 Fords in the T-buckets and stuff, pretty much they take the stock rails and they cut, and it's kind of like Z-ing the frame. It's the lowered trucks and stuff, you call it a step notch, stuff like that. But on these, since it's really only in the rear, I'm planning on brazing the frame up at an angle. So it'll be like an L right here on both sides, and then running a mini 4-link for the axle. That way the chassis can stay close to the ground, and the axle can set up really high, and then the body can set down over the top of it, and tires will stick out the side. So that's one major modification I'm going to have to make. That's the main reason why I opted to go with these steel rails. One, they're already cut, and two, I can braze to them fairly easily. So that's my plan for the rear. It's just going to be a real small short 4-link. Model T, Model A suspensions are usually an inverted leaf spring, and it sets down on top of, can I get this camera to focus? Sets down on top of the axle and provides springiness like that. So I would like to incorporate this. This is a, to me, a semi-truck leaf pack. It is crimped together. I cut the main leaf off of it a long time ago, and it's just been laying around. I may end up using this on the front if I can find a way to attach it. Let's see, moving on. My RC four-wheel drive R4 transmission. Now, one of the things I've always been drawn to with the rat rods is they're just kind of ratty. These Model A's and Model T's had wooden floorboards, so when guys come back to mod them, yeah, some of them put wood back in, some of them throw street signs and hammer and rivet them together, and some guys just rock, you know, they got a place to put their feet, a place to put the pedals and the seat to bolt to something, and the transmission sticks all out in the open, and that is something that I would really like to incorporate into this, is having the transmission exposed to the interior. The only thing I'm not sure on is mounting up a shifter, because I do want it to look like a manual transmission. The kit does come with a really long shift arm, and I already have a custom skull shift knob that's made for this model kit, and it is metal and it's the right size, so I want to make a big tall shifter come up pretty high and have the skull on it. Like I said, it's R4, and I did buy the plate to mount the motor to, and it has these brackets, and all this is designed for the Trail Finder 2, but I can make it work in here very easily. All I need to do is mount. I can flip these mounts if I need to raise it up or down. So that's all stuff that can be easily fabbed, so I'm not worried about that. And I like this too because it put my motor right where the plastic motor would be, so I was hoping I could just hide it on inside, but still maybe find a way around that. That's still later in the process. The first step here is to get the chassis modded, axles mounted, and it rolling, and start looking at steering and linkages and stuff like that, trying to get it functional. Then we'll worry about adapting the body onto the frame. Move on to the front axle. I just bought a Tamiya King Hauler axle, and I'm not sure if those are aluminum or steel. I've never been able to tell without. I think these are cast steel. I hope they are, because I may need to braze it. It is a little bit narrower. Again, I don't have, let's see, I don't have any bearings in there because these are 12mm hex wheels. I just threw them on there for their size. But yeah, it's still a little bit narrow. I would like to add at least ½ an inch to that axle. I don't know if I'm going to have to try to do that on the ends, or if I can add a section in the middle and braze it. But like the original Model T and Model A suspensions have an I-beam like that with a leaf spring on top, and the leaf spring's attached to the chassis. This isn't, the axle isn't, and then you have long radius arms going back to the side of the chassis rails. So yeah, so they call them hairpins. They would bolt back here, and you'd have 2 bars going up to the axle to keep it where it needs to be with your leaf spring on top. So ideally, I would like to try and make some actual metal radius arms, hinge them on the frame, and attach them to the front axle, so it's more true to scale. But one problem I'm having too with the mock-up is, where do I want my front axle? Now, typically you see rat rods with like T-buckets and stuff like that. The axle sticks way out in the front like this on the frame, and that is easy. That would be way easier to do. All I have to do is mount a bracket on the front to put my leaf spring, and then run my radius arms out to the front. But I wanted a 32 Ford, so I've got new problems here. I'll go ahead and just throw this up here so you can kind of get a gist of the layout. So typically the 32 Fords they're not built like that. They still throw the front axle under the front of the truck, or the frame, somewhere in this vicinity. Might move it forward a little bit. A lot shorter wheelbase, but I don't know yet. We've still got a long way before we get to that, but that's kind of probably the 3rd or 4th step, is figuring out where the front axle needs to be. Proportionally, I like this better. It's going to be more difficult to install, but I like the look on the front here. I like the way the grill sits down, and the chassis horns stick out like a real Model A chassis. So that's going to come down to how well I can fabricate mounts and how the stance of the car comes out. I don't know why I like this red hood. They won't stay up there even with tape, but I just like the look of it. The open sides, the off-color hood. It's got some primer on the other side. It's just a very natural age to it. Things look cool like that. That's kind of the whole purpose of a rat rod, is to build something from junk, from whatever you've got, from whatever you can get hold of that's inexpensive and affordable, or just junk that you got laying around. And you can build something that runs out of it. That's really cool. So that's kind of what I want to capture, the true essence of a rat rod. I've got some just random tires that I've got laying around. This chassis I've had forever. I've got a spare axle. I did buy the front axle because I accidentally sold all my King Holler axles a couple months ago, but I had to pick up a new one of those. And but yeah, the rest of it I'm gonna try to just go with it, do what I can with what I got, and we'll see how it comes out. I think that's about it for this, just an overview. The next step, I believe I'm going to start on the rear of the frame. I've got to, I guess the first thing I've got to do is sort out the width of the axle so I can get some tires outside the body, and then I can figure out how high up in the body the axle needs to go, and then I can figure out how far I need to step the rear of the frame up to clear it. So the next installment will be rear suspension based. So anyway, I think that's it, guys. Stay tuned. This is going to be a very unique build. Be sure and follow along on Instagram. I've got a lot of sneak peeks and stuff on there before the videos come out. And you can follow me along on Facebook as well. I'd like to talk about RC and stuff on there. I've got a good group of guys that hang out on my page, and a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, and yep, like to share it. So again, thank y'all for watching. Stay tuned.